Hello, I'm really excited to talk to Vikki today, Vikki from Your Best Awaits. And I have to say, I can look back to about 7 years ago where I would not have been ready for this conversation. At that point in time, I was a nurse on an inpatient psychiatric unit, and I was doing great there. I was thriving there by every measure. I was a charge nurse. I was on every committee. I was chairing committees. I even received an Excellence in Nursing Award. And I am a very different person now, and I see things very differently than I did then. And that kind of started when I was reading some new information that was new to me. And it was about the clinical trials around antidepressant medications. And what was surprising is that well, first, it was that it took FOIA lawsuits to get those research articles released. I was shocked as somebody who believed in transparency in healthcare that information like that wasn't available to the doctors prescribing these medications, to nurses like me who are dispensing them, and to the tens of millions of people taking them. Why wouldn't they have access to clinical trial data? It didn't make any sense to me. And then looking at a meta-analysis of that data written up by a doctor named Irving Kirsch in a study called The Emperor's New Drugs. What was really surprising was that the trials submitted to the FDA did not show significant effect above placebo. And that really started me down a rabbit hole, questioning a lot of my core held foundational beliefs about the job that I was doing there, because I had spent years telling patients, you know, this medication is going to help fix a chemical imbalance in your brain, and it's possible you'll need to be on this medication for the rest of your life. I was really good at that conversation. I had convinced a lot of skeptical people that they were doing the right thing in starting these antidepressants. And as I learned more about the side effects that happen to some people, for some people, it can induce violence against themselves and others. For some people, it can cause sexual dysfunction that can be permanent even after they stop medications. I was really becoming, I was starting to question everything. And it also started me thinking a lot about the placebo effect. And it had always had kind of this negative connotation in my mind, like there's some sort of trickery involved in it. And in the time since then, I've really started to come to appreciate how important mindset is. And so that's why I'm so excited to talk to Vikki today and talk to her about the work that she's doing. So Vikki, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. You know, I think we all have our awakening at some point. You know, I think I knew in probably my 40s. So I think I knew that I was intuitive early on, but enough people around my life didn't buy into that. So I kind of just put it on a shelf and kept living life. And in my 40s, I had a neighbor who we were sitting in their garage, and he's like, oh yeah, my mom went and saw this energy practitioner guy and came up with some really weird things that he was able to clear. And I'm like, I want in. So I'm one of those that I'm like, sounds cool to me. I don't look at the science of things, but I 100% hear of the things of when we're looking at science. Sometimes you got to look a lot deeper because it's not always what they say. But when I realized that I was intuitive and that energy does work, and when life happens, we get these imbalances in us, and those imbalances can start driving everything we do in our life, including limiting beliefs. It made sense to me. So kind of played around with energy healing for about 10 years. And then I was raising my kids. And it was about 3 years ago where I said, I don't want to be part of corporate America anymore. I don't know what it looks like. I'm ready to do something else. And that's when I discovered Dr. Bradley Nelson, who is a founder of Emotion Code, Belief Code, and Body Code. And he explained it just as that, as life happens. And when life happens, we get these imbalances. And I said, now it makes it easier to explain energy work versus just being kind of out there and more, woo-woo, as a lot of people like to call it. And it resonated so much that that became my new thing of going, I've got the ability, I've got a unique gift, and I want to share it. And little did I know, 2 years after that, I would have a decision to make, take a stand for my health, and walk away from corporate America and start doing this full time. And that was one of the levers of doing this full time, when my natural gift has just heightened and made huge strides in allowing people to get to the limiting beliefs that are holding them back. And it is so powerful.
That's interesting. I feel like we've had kind of very different journeys that have led us to kind of similar destinations. One of those is about kind of questioning authority a little bit. You know, you kind of had that experience of rebuking that push to be a good corporate trooper, you know, and I certainly got to that point in my work at the hospital too. I was starting to rock the boat quite a bit and be that uncomfortable employee sometimes for the questions that I was asking about our standards of care there, and what had become just par for the course type of treatments for people, when you could look at the outcomes, and this is fair to generalize throughout the entire country, but you look at our outcomes for both our mental health system and just our medical system in general, and they're not great. And there's a lot of people within that establishment who I don't think are asking enough questions, and not enough people rocking the boat and trying to get to root causes of why, if we have, you know, the best healthcare system to ever exist, why chronic disease is going up and up and up, and why life expectancy is going down and quality of life is going down, and the mental health epidemic we have going on right now is just why is it so out of control if mental health medications work so well? So
yeah. Well, it's interesting because you and I met because through the carnivore community. I happen to be carnivore probably when we met, because I want to say it's going on, I think going on 3 years, no, 2 years, probably 2 years. I had been carnivore and went to my first meetup in New Jersey, and in New Jersey, had made some amazing friends. And you start hearing these people talking about how eliminating foods and eating meat has healed them in ways that they never knew possible. And a lot of it is the mental health. And those are the things that you just start looking, going, oh my goodness, why is this not being on the broadcast all over the place? And what I've come to appreciate is this is more the organic grassroots, where there's so many more people having these conversations and looking at things differently. And if they question one thing, now they're questioning everything. And I think that's also why I've had more people come to me who were skeptics on the energy healing, going, well, what if this did work? Like, they're sick and tired of not feeling their best, or wondering, like, why do I feel like I'm always swimming uphill on things? And those are things that, like, if it worked for this, what do I have to lose? And what they find is they have everything to gain. And that's where these conversations are not on the media, but people who are waking up and realizing that there is so much more than what we are being told, are having these dialogues underground, per se, out in the open, and sharing it and getting more people on board. So I think that's the cool thing, is as frustrating as it is, like, we can't necessarily change all of that, but what we can do is get more and more people to realize there's other ways of doing things, and that's start to be bulldozing on what people believe is possible. And some of them will never come around.
Yeah, absolutely. And that experience really resonates with me too, because I've been to a multitude of meetups over the last few years and talked to probably hundreds of people and heard them tell their stories. And I've talked to thousands of patients as a nurse on the psych unit in the hospital. And I have never heard somebody in the hospital sing the praises of their psych meds like I've heard people talk about the incredible recoveries that they've achieved for their mental health from the carnivore diet. And what's really interesting and amazing about that is very few of them started carnivore because they were looking to heal their mental health. Usually the path is they have some sort of autoimmune disease that is affecting their life in incredibly catastrophic ways, and they hear about this wild, crazy diet where people only eat animal-based foods, and they end up putting their autoimmune disease in remission, and they lose a bunch of weight as a side effect. And their anxiety and depression also got better. And I started this podcast talking a little bit about the placebo effect, and you can take the placebo effect out of the picture for that, because they weren't doing it for their mental health. They didn't have this expectation that their mental health was going to get better from this diet, but it happened anyway, and it happened in really profound ways for people experiencing improvements, where they've struggled for decades and decades. So that's always caused my ears to perk up when I hear people say that, and I hear it over and over and over from the carnivore community. So yeah, another thing that I probably would have found conspiratorial, a decade ago, and now here I am. Now here I am talking about how important mindset is and how important nutrition is, and I guess I should say, just to be clear, I don't necessarily believe that the carnivore diet is right for everyone, or that in following the carnivore diet, people are able to go off their psych medications. I myself don't do strict carnivore. I'm more of a ketovore. I eat keto. I can get away with a lot. I'm lucky that I can eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and stray and not suffer the consequences that a lot of the people in the carnivore community do. So I'm lucky like that. And just as a general disclaimer, I should say it before I forget, to anybody who hears me dump on psychiatric meds, coming off of psychiatric meds is a very delicate balance. It can be dangerous. If you're interested in coming off your medications, that is a fantastic goal. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, but it's not always possible for all people to be completely off their medications. But if you set a good foundation of nutrition and mindset, that's a huge part of the battle, and that's how you can have the best chance at doing it. If your doctor doesn't think so, find a doctor who does, who's familiar with hyperbolic tapering. That's the safe way to do it. As I look back on my career, I'm kind of mortified at how many times I didn't recognize that somebody's symptoms in the hospital setting were related to side effects, including protracted withdrawal from, a benzo or an antidepressant that they had quit months and months and months before, and we just weren't trained to recognize it, and people would experience very real distress. It's really hard to come off those medications if you've been on them a while, but healing is possible. It just takes time and takes good mindset. So with that in mind, do you kind of want to tell people, Vikki, what you do?
Yeah. So through energy healing, I do muscle testing. So muscle testing has to do with talking to your body, and in talking to your body, we can all do this. We can ask yes or no questions, and our body will respond. You can look, it's called sway testing, kinesiology. There's a lot of different terms that people use, but you're able to talk to your body. So we can all talk to our body. So I have the ability to be able to tap into somebody else's energy, to be able to muscle test yes or no questions on things that they find are holding them back in an area of their life. So a lot of people will come to me because they respond in a way that, like, maybe somebody a parent snapped at their child, and they're like, oh my gosh, my son did not deserve to have me respond the way I did. And how does that person cope with that feeling that they just had of, yelling at somebody for an unknown reason? Or we get responded to with work or with partners or with kids where we roll our eyes and we take it on ourselves, and then we'll start eating foods that we weren't supposed to. We'll be going, why am I doing so good in one area of my life, but I'm just a mess on the back end of things? And those are all stem from limiting beliefs. We get limiting beliefs when we're in the womb. We may not, a parent, the mother may not have a favorable pregnancy, and she's miserable the whole time, and she's cursing every single minute of it. Well, that energy is absorbed into the child, and then they come into this within this world having this already a chip on their shoulder, and they don't realize, like, why is this following me along? Well, and look at the subconscious is it's a photo album, and it's a photo album of every single moment in time. So what I'm doing is I'm tapping into somebody's photo album, muscle testing to say there's an energetic imprint. You're saying that you're stuck in this part of your life, or you're frustrated because your response when you deal with it is anger, or you shut down, or you're a people pleaser. Like, how have these limiting beliefs through their life set them back in being the true self that they are? And when somebody comes to me saying, I'm stuck here, or why do I always go to this food? That food represents something to me. So my journey was Reese's peanut butter cup. Like, I binge ate on Reese's peanut butter cup. And what I was able to identify through my energy practitioner was when I would binge on my Reese's is when it was like Reese's to me was love, self-love. So as I was trying to figure out my life in my 20s and what does it look like to work and relationships, and I was going from relationship to relationship, I found love in Reese's. And then that became my binge food. Every time that would be my go-to is sugar, sugar, sugar. And I was able to then disconnect that association between a Reese's and love. So that's like, no, Reese's is toxic. I don't have to go to that. And then the mindset part of it is, how do you now say, I'm not going to eat Reese's, I need to do self-love? And that's where the full spectrum of somebody healing between, the mindset part of it comes into play. So, you've got parents who have left a child in their youth. And there's so many times a father figure, a mother figure leaves a relationship with a child at a very early age. And that then shows up as abandonment. So then what happens is they're in kindergarten and their very best friend all of a sudden wants nothing to do with them. And it goes back and it validates this point in time when a parent left. Let's just say it was 3 years old, because the subconscious knows what age it is. And then they're in high school and they're in a relationship. And the next thing you know, this person's left somebody for somebody else. And all of a sudden this abandonment comes back. And now all of a sudden they start getting these self-worth issues of, I'm not good enough, or I'm not supposed to be happy. And that then is like a ticker tape in the back of their head going, I'm not supposed to be happy. I'm a people pleaser. And they don't even realize what's going on, because that has just become their normal. Well, their subconscious is able to then go back and identify what's going back. And I've got the gift to be able to help somebody to clear their whole timeline of when limiting beliefs come up. And it's amazing that people can look at it and go, I had no idea. Like, you came up with ages that I can relate to, and I have no idea how. And so it's your subconscious. It's screaming at you like, please pick me. I don't want you to be miserable. And normally we'll shut it down by going, oh, I'm just going to eat a Reese's. Oh, I'm going to go have a pizza. I'm going to go have a bottle of wine, because it quiets the alarm, but you still have all these limiting beliefs going by that as you're pushing through and making your goals, like, why is everything so hard? And it's because you're going against these beliefs that you're persevering it. You've got a better mindset. You've got a good scenario. You've got a good job. You're making money, all these things that you should be happy about. But something is still saying, no, you're not supposed to be happy, because that's what you've had instilled in you from a very young age. So it's amazing how spot on it is when somebody says, I'm sick and tired of doing this. What can I do differently?
Yeah, that's very interesting. It makes me think of several things. One is the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Another thing is ACEs is something we talk about in the mental health establishment, adverse childhood experiences, and how those follow you into adulthood and can kind of color how you react to things and how you perceive things. And also makes me think of borderline personality disorder, which we really have an epidemic of in this country, although that definition is kind of problematic in some ways, but one of the underlying themes is the fear of abandonment and how that underlying fear colors every relationship that a person has, and can often become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the vast majority of the time, people have some sort of trauma history in their childhood that originates with, and it sounds like you're tapping into that, and you're kind of untangling that a little bit. And what I think is interesting about what you do as well is that you're not just kind of shining a light on it. You also give people tools for moving forward. So it's not just kind of a recognition, but it's also future oriented work that you do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting. I had a session this morning with somebody, and some of the things that had come up kind of resonated, and it was that I made one comment, and it was, you've got, so she had a billboard in front of her that says, "Ignore me." And this billboard, when I said "ignore me," she goes, she's like, for the first time, like, I feel heard. And it's just, I'm reading the signs and the energy and directing where to go, because again, if you want to equate it to the body keeps score, like it does, it knows every single moment in time of every single thing that happened. And that's where that photo album comes in. And when I muscle test, it's just going to that energy in that photo album where the body has kept score to go, yep, pick me, because yep, this is holding you back. So you're right. In some ways, people feel so validated going, oh, I thought, or I've dealt with this in therapy. Why is this still coming up? Well, they're able to talk about it in ways that they've never talked about anything or trauma, whether it be big trauma or little trauma. But I've had people where I've taken them back to an age, and all like age 7, and like, oh yeah, I thought I dealt with that in therapy. Well, I said, well, you probably have done an amazing job at doing it that way, but you still have this energy that is still there. And if we can release it, so if you take the first time something happens as like a silver magnet, and let's just go back to the abandonment at age 3, that silver magnet is now embedded in the body. And then every time they feel abandoned, it's bringing another magnet back to that. And it's this big imbalance. Well, I see when I'm going through clearing all of these things energetically, it just demagnetizes it. So it's almost like that energy just goes away. And that's how they can feel a different sense of relief and moving forward in ways that they never had possible. And once it's gone, it's gone. Now, there may be other things tied to abandonment, but the things that we identified, those magnets are gone. They're not coming back. And it's pretty powerful when somebody can say, I have not felt angry on this in I can't tell you how long. And it is such a reprieve to the mindset to have free space to do things that I can use to better myself and reframe scenarios that I have going on. Instead of going back to the same old thing that I've been doing for decades, I can stop and go, I can think of this differently. Instead of having a conversation that I might absorb it, I can see myself having this conversation, but the energy of it is up here and not being put into my body where I'm absorbing it. I can almost put it into a separate space. And then when I'm done going, oh, you know what? Great. I was able to support this person in a way I never did. Now I get to take this box out and dispose of it because I don't need it in here. I don't need that. And it's when people realize that we are energy and everything, especially being empathic and in the nursing community and mental health, a lot of us do have that. I want to help and I want to be there. And then we take it on ourselves and not realizing what that ends up manifesting in our life. So it is very powerful.
It is powerful. It's powerful and it's empowering. It's so empowering to it's such a different message to send people than, oh, you have a chemical imbalance. Here's your pills. You probably need to be on them forever, or here's your diagnosis. It's going to be in your medical chart forever. These things send people a message that they're broken, that they're medicalized essentially. And it's a really good business model if you want somebody to rely on that system for years and years and decades. It's a much better system and business model than it is to empower them with work like you're doing and educate them about how their nutrition might be impacting their mental health. Like when you do that, people heal and then they're on their way and they don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, but that's not as profitable.
No. And you know, and I look at it, you know, theoretically, depending on how old I'm working with somebody, and most of my clients are in their, you know, women over 40, and there's a lot of beliefs and a lot of things that have been going on in their lives that, you know, I joke and I'm like, well, would you rather spend money on your maintenance and your body to realize that every time that we release limiting beliefs, you're bettering yourself. So if you're hitting goals, you're, you know, setting goals, you know, it's almost like you're setting goals, you know, you're driven, and all of a sudden you get a speed bump or you get a block. Like it's clearing that off and go, oh, now you can take some, you know, now maybe 2 months later, you're hitting goals and you get another limiting belief that decides that it wants to kind of put you in your tracks. And like that's the kind of maintenance that's fun to do, to go, oh, okay, what's coming up this time? Because last time this came up, and it's rewarding for people to realize. And again, I think for some people, they feel heard in ways that they never knew. But it's really, again, that their higher self going, no, this has been holding you back for far too long. It's time to release it. So I say it's a fun kind of maintenance that people get to do and feel amazing afterwards, versus going to the doctor and going, yep, here's another pill because you had a side effect. Or, you know, they walk out of there defeated because they don't feel heard, they don't feel seen, and they're just another number in the system. And, you know, it's very rewarding knowing that there is other ways to heal ourselves. And it's just letting people know what that looks like, who happen to either come across our conversation or just have another conversation with somebody else that can go, do you know that there's a different way to be able to heal ourselves in ways that you're not going to hear about in any other way besides these grassroots efforts of people saying, I deserve better, and here's what worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of patients that I worked with for years and years. I remember one woman who was about 30 years old the last time I saw her, and she had been coming to my hospital unit since she was 13. So she had been in the mental health establishment for 17 years, and she was not doing well. She was morbidly obese from all the metabolic dysfunction caused by psych meds. She was completely anhedonic, unable to find joy in things that used to bring her joy. She just had this blunting to her where it's like, I mean that's, you know, when we talk about how psych meds work, that's kind of one of the things that they do is they throw up a barrier to you feeling the lowest lows, but it can also throw up a barrier to people feeling like things like joy and fulfillment. And I just feel like it's we fast track people in that direction way too easily. And there's a lot of reasons why. One of them is profiteering corporations. Another one is kind of become the cultural expectation at this point that when people go to the doctor, they expect a pill as a solution. They've been taught how magical these medications are, that lifestyle changes are just kind of you know, it's not that they're completely ignored, but they aren't given anywhere near the emphasis of, you know, taking the latest and greatest medication.
Yeah, well, you look at all of these areas of diabetes. I mean, I'm just going to use diabetes because I hear about that all the time with the carnivore. It's, you know, all that they knew was to say, I really want that chocolate ice cream, so I'm going to eat the chocolate ice cream. I'll just take an extra dose of my medicine because that'll fix it. Like where my niche comes in is like, wouldn't you like to know why you go to chocolate ice cream? Like one of my clients, she was back to eating chocolate ice cream, and she's like, can we do a session on this? I'm like, absolutely. So for her, what it came back to was it took her back to when she was 7 and she was eating chocolate ice cream with her dad. That was a very special memory for her. Well, her dad's now passed and she's really missing him. So how is she getting close to him? Eating chocolate ice cream. Like, she knows this, but and then when she was able to realize, going, oh my gosh, I just thought I felt like eating chocolate ice cream. Like, when I put those pieces together, or her subconscious put those pieces together, she was able to look at chocolate ice cream a lot different. And just as I did with my Reese's and Love, I have scenario after scenario after scenario where a certain food for that particular person, when they're in that reaction mode and they go to a food, that food means something to them. It could be chaos, stability. It means something to them. And when they hear what it means for them, again, 99%, let's just say 95% of the time, they can go, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And now they're able to do something different than eating. So instead of having to take an extra dose of metformin, whatever that is, they can look at it and go, no, I just need to realize that, chocolate ice cream means chaos, or brownies mean chaos, and I am in a chaotic mood. What can I do different to step away from the chaos, take care of myself, so I can step into what I need to do with a clearer mind? And that's powerful. So that's the other part of the mind shift, that people solve their problems by food, and that's self-sabotaging, and it's demeaning, and it's unempowering to them. And I feel like I've got the gift to be able to empower people in a new way, which for many is life-changing.
Yeah, it is life-changing. I worked on an eating disorder unit for a while. That's just an incredibly difficult patient population when you talk about body image and relationship with food. It's I really didn't appreciate it for myself until I tried to cut sugar and carbs out of my diet, and I didn't think I had any issues with food until I did that, and that was really eye-opening for me, where I would find myself walking up to the fridge and putting my hand on the door handle, and then taking that moment of mindfulness to ask myself, like, am I really hungry, or am I craving something? And I had no idea I had cravings until I started practicing those mindfulness skills around food. What you're doing also parallels something I'm working on. I'm working on some self-authoring exercises for people that kind of explore their relationship with food, kind of looking at their past relationship with food, kind of where they're at currently, and then helping them map out a healthier relationship with food. And there's no, for me, when I think about how important that is, I just have to think about the carnivore meetups that I've been to, where you see these people who have gone down that path, and it was hard and it was a lot of work, but they get to this point where it's just it's unbelievable to see how well they're thriving physically and emotionally with it, and it's very, very inspiring, because it's like nothing I would ever see in a hospital setting.
Yeah. But I will also say that even through the carnivore community, and I'm going to raise my hand being one of them, like, I still stress eat. Like, I still have to find ways. So I'm grateful that for the most part, I don't go back down the sugar, because I'm a sugar addict. I can't have just one bite. I will eat it until I feel sick. And that's the self-sabotage part of me. But I will still overeat food, because that's part of how I've learned to deal with it all my life. So I think that's also the misconception is, oh, you go here and you don't have any other problems. Like, no, we still have to shift our mindset constantly and be aware of things. And I'm just grateful that with all of the progress that I've made in my journey, the time when I am overeating or doing things to excess is a very short window. And I look at that still as that is success, because food is an integral part of our lives, whether, with however we are consuming our food. And if we still have a distorted way of eating, that that awareness is going, okay, what does that mean? Like, how can we look at things differently? Because it's amazing. But again, that doesn't mean that I'm still not going to get pissed off. I'm still not going to do things that are going to trigger me to say, I'm so used to doing this by eating food. Reframing that, if I can do that more times than not, those are huge successes. But when I don't, then how can I give myself grace to say, you know what, I had a struggling day today. I'm going to give myself grace for eating this and be okay with it and not beat myself up over it. So again, the mind shift of that all is so vital to our long-term mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's food, so we're going to constantly be tempted, and it's everywhere we look. We're having foods that are not going to be the best for us physically or mentally offered to us. It's so easy to get a hold of food that does you harm. I think about this when I'm doing a travel nurse gig right now down in Iowa. And as I walk through that hospital, there are vending machines around every corner that are just full of sugary snacks and soda. And even when you walk into the hospital cafeteria, there's an entire bank of cereal like Cocoa Puffs and that sort of thing on one wall. And then on the other wall, it's all the prepackaged muffins. And it's just carbs, sugar, and ultra processed crap, and it's like the hospitals I've worked at have been in Wisconsin and Iowa, and none of the hospitals in Wisconsin or Iowa are more than a few miles away from some of the best farmland in the world, where they could have locally made whole foods that are actually healthy for people physically and mentally, but that's not for a variety of complicated reasons. That's not the system we have, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it's funny, people in the carnivore community, it's like, oh, how can we sneak in some meat to these people? How can,
Right.
That's like, that's what we want snuck in. We don't want all the sugary stuff. It's like, no, bring me carnivore bar. Bring me something that's going to nourish me.
Right.
Or let me fast, because that's the best way. So it's fascinating just to see the mindset of things. And again, I think that's where we're both in the same platform of how do we give people additional tools to help them in the journey where they feel lost and unheard and frustrated and addicted to things that they don't know how to stop taking. And like, how many times have you heard it's like someone wants to stop taking their meds, but there's so much fear around that if you do, the consequences are so much worse, and they just, fine, I'll just do this. And allowing them a different way to be able to realize that there are options outside of mainstream media, and you get the opportunity to look a little bit in a different direction to find solutions that might work for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Those mindfulness skills are so important, and those are, again, something I was a little bit dismissive of early in my career as a mental health nurse, and now I see it as one of those foundational skills that you need to have. You need to have that ability to kind of rationally detach and examine your emotions and motivations non-judgmentally, and do that check-in, and then develop some good insights and some good habits from there. And it sounds like that's exactly the sort of thing that you do with clients.
Yeah, it is. And again, it's just giving them hope that they didn't realize they need it. I have many people who will just go, I don't know, so-and-so says I need to call you. So I don't even know what this whole thing's about. And by the end of the call, they're like, wow, it's just like, how did you do that? And I'm like, no, it's just, again, it's these alarms going off, and it's going right to the photo album to go, oh yeah, nope, these things we need to clear. And they don't have to go back and rehash things. I mean, people, through therapy or, childhood regressions and certain processes, they make them go and like relive it and talk about it and reframe, like pretend you're the parent and now you're talking to, like, none of that stuff. I mean, I joke, I'm like, nope, I go in and I go out. This is what the subconscious says. I release it. we take care of it. You don't even need to elaborate. You don't even have to say it out loud. You can just think, oh yeah, if I say age 8, and you can just think, oh yeah, something happened, and you don't want to talk about it. I muscle test into that energy. I'm like, yep, that's it. Okay, let's clear it. And they're expecting that they have to do all of the stuff around. Like, no, it's like, it's instant. Like, you've suffered enough through your years. You don't have to resuffer to reframe all these things. There's an easy way to release this energy. And the people who just go, okay, I'm curious, what does it look like? They're pleasantly pleased at what's come up, and that it's been easy enough to release and provide them some freedom in their lives in ways that they've never experienced before.
Well, it's interesting too that you have people come to you who kind of don't know what you're about, because that brings us back to the placebo effect and the power of belief. And it sounds like they're having these experiences with you where they weren't desperate to believe when they first started with you. That's really interesting. It makes me think too about it has felt to me like there's been some sort of spiritual awakening throughout the country over the last few years. Is spirituality something that's part of how you do what you do, or what are your thoughts and perspectives on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's been a lot of people who have grown up in religion, and some of those people still say that, God is the only one that's going to heal. And I do, and I don't know enough about religion to cite some of the things, but I look and go, that's great. If you ever think differently, I'm here for you. And there's other people who've gone through the whole dogmatic part of the religion, and they realize what's taking place. And it's like, no, you know what? God doesn't want you to suffer like this. We're not meant to be suffering individuals, and life happens. And some things to some people are really, really shitty that they have to endure in their life. But we're not meant to suffer. And that's where I feel that when we look at something of going, how can we do this? And sometimes people take a vow, they'll take a vow, something happens, like they're never going to open up, and they keep to that vow. So they never open up, and they have all these shallow relationships. And then they think, I have to learn the lesson. And it's like, what if the lesson was, you don't have to learn a lesson? Maybe the lesson is, I'm showing up in your life right now, and let's go in and figure out what's going on, because you deserve to live prosperous. We deserve to be happy. We deserve to be able to pat ourselves in the back and give ourselves a high five, and have people in our lives that are empowering us and not bringing us down. And sometimes it's a limiting belief that I can clear for somebody. So, there's definitely people who are not open to it. And again, I think it's some of it's through the religious aspect of it. But I also am getting more and more people who have been in the religious, and they're like, God brought us all to this one place. And if he brought us here, then maybe he does want me to look at things differently. So I think for sometimes, again, it just depends on how frustrated are they with their lives, and how sick and tired are they of doing all of these other things that haven't worked. And it's like, okay, you've got everything to gain. And that's the cool part about it.
Yeah, I was when you first said we're not meant to suffer, I was initially inclined to disagree with you, because suffering is always part of the human experience, or hardship is always part of the human experience. But it also makes me think about, I've worked with a lot of adolescents on the inpatient psychiatric unit. And I had the opportunity to do a community mental health nursing assignment in Tanzania when I was in nursing school. And that was an amazing experience in one of the most impoverished areas you can imagine in the world. And our host family had adopted this girl. She was in her early teens at the time. They had adopted her when she was 6 years old. That was after both her parents had died of AIDS. She was essentially starving. She was filling her stomach up with charcoal just to have something in it, so she didn't feel like she was starving. And they adopted her briefly at first because her brothers came and took her, and then they were sex trafficking her at 6 years old. But eventually, this family got her back and got her in a stable situation where her her baseline needs were met. And at the time we were there, she was just absolutely thriving, always had a huge smile on her face. And when I got back to Wisconsin, and I'm working with adolescents here, and they're admitted to the inpatient psychiatric unit because their parents wouldn't get them the latest iPhone or something along those lines. And just comparatively, it was just completely different worlds. And that still stands out to me in terms of how important mindset is, and how suffering to some extent is a matter of mindset, is a matter of choice, because hardship is inevitable. What do you do with it? What do you do with setbacks? What do you do with things that truly and genuinely hurt? Do you do the work to find those silver linings? Do you do that work to say, good, because this is going to allow me to focus on this, or this is going to create this opportunity, even though this really sucks and this really hurts right now?
Yeah, I mean, we have to be our number one cheerleader. And unfortunately, instead of being our number one cheerleader, we're our number one negative talker. And I feel this, and I'm this, and look at this. And we point out all of our flaws. And that's the dialogue that's going back. So how can, for some of people, it's how can they feel inspired? Because the chatter in their head is all negative. And then it shows up in their energy. And then they wonder why things don't go right for them. Well, sometimes it's as easy as flipping that switch and just going, what would it look like to be happy today? Why is it so easy to be happy? And ask yourself positive questions. I mean, that's one of the mindset shifts that I share with people. Like, we know how to answer all the questions of why did this happen to me? Because we go down that nasty rabbit hole. But what if we flip that conversation to go, why is it so easy for me to attract people in my life that support me? Why is it so easy for me to go through the day without wanting any sugar, without wanting any carbs? Why is it so easy for me to eat meat every single day? Oh my gosh, why is it so easy for me to meat every day? Is because that's when my chatter is quiet and I can actually do things that are important to me. So ask yourself questions of what your goal is so that you can say, oh, it's so easy for me to release weight. It's because I'm walking every single day. Why is it so easy to walk every day? Because every time I walk every day, I feel inspired. I'm able to connect to nature in ways that I never thought of. Like, ask yourself the questions that are going to get you the answers for your goals. That's a way to shift some of the mindset. And it's an easy thing to do, that you're asking yourself powerful questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Vikki, I believe my best awaits. I believe your best awaits. Do you want to let people know how to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So my website is yourbestawaits.net. And I'm on social media on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok as Your Best Awaits. And I look forward to being able to help people to release their limiting beliefs, because I help people improve their lives one limiting belief at a time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Dave.